This is Real Estate Rookie Show number 61. I'm your host, Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with Tony Robinson. Hey, Tony, what's going on?
What's up, Ashley? How are you doing today?
Good. I really don't have anything exciting to really share today. I was thinking, what can me and Tony talk about?
Nothing too crazy. I feel like we got some good things coming in the pipeline. I guess one thing, so for the listeners, let me and Ashley know what you guys are thinking about the Saturday episodes. I want to hear the feedback. Let us know if you guys are enjoying it. If there's specific topics you guys want us to answer, Facebook group, you can leave questions in there. Call us on the Rookie request line at 888-5-ROOKIE. Just shout us out wherever you can so we can get some more questions flowing in that way.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't heard, Saturday is the Rookie Reply. It's a new episode we're doing every Saturday, just short and sweet and to the point. We're pulling questions from Instagram, Facebook, the Rookie request line voicemails, and Tony and I are just going to answer your questions. So make sure you guys listen to that. We released the first one on February 6th, I think, if that's a Saturday. And we just answered about analysis paralysis and gave some tips on that. So definitely, leave a review on iTunes if you liked it or whatever platform you're listening to podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. And definitely let us know in the Real Estate Rookie Facebook group too. So today we have a great show with Michael where we learn everything you need to know about house hacking.
Michael's also a digital nomad. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to find out in today's episode. But his story is really unique because he's closed on 15 doors in a little over 8 months. And, obviously everyone's not going to be able to scale that fast, but there's definitely some nuggets in his story that I think people can pull from to help get started in their own real estate investing careers.
Especially because these are all in different markets. They're not in one place. So he talks about how he actually follows people on Instagram, online, and, sees who are the successful people and what markets are they going to, and then he'll research the market from there. So some really great tips on how he networks with people and connects. And he also recommends a couple different books, especially on house hacking. So this will be a great episode. Michael, welcome to the show. Can you start off telling everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer. I work at a startup called Blueboard, and I've been a digital nomad pre-COVID for about a year, and was traveling actually quite a bit before that too. Before I was full-time a digital nomad, I felt like during my travels I had enough money, right? Like I'm traveling around. A lot of countries are a lot cheaper than America, and I realized it's scary to not have money coming in, to not have steady cash flow. When you have traditional retirement account and you're just drawing down 4% per year, you feel like the water is sifting through your hands, right? Like I think with real estate, the whole idea for me was hey, if I have an income, it's kind of like I'm paying myself a salary. That mental shift of I have an income coming in, just changes that kind of fear factor so much. I started thinking, okay, well, I want to go into real estate. I want to build out a portfolio. Let me look into it and read more about it and see what it's all about. So got started from there, started doing research, started learning more things. And in June of last year, I basically bought my first property and had my second one closed 2 weeks later. So in June, I closed on a duplex in Indiana. And then I closed on a quadplex in Denver. And that was basically the start.
For people that don't know what a digital nomad is, can you describe that for us? What the heck is that?
Yeah. So basically it's just traveling forever. A digital nomad, basically, it's a term. It's kind of a fad term. So, some people have some stigmas to it, but if we take out the stigmas, it just means that it's someone who's continuing to travel the world, and there's no two digital nomads who do it alike. For me, it's usually a month to 2 to 3 months in a country at a time. I like to take it slow. I like to go deep. Some people go a new country every 3 to 5 days. So it's all up to your style, but effectively the only thing it really means is that you're just traveling and you're not at home.
So what does your whole portfolio look like right now? Is it those two deals or do you have more?
I started my portfolio with the parameters of rather than creating my life around my portfolio, I wanted to set boundaries of how do I want my life to look like, and then create a portfolio based off that. So given that I want to travel, I might be abroad, I might be somewhere else. I don't necessarily think I'll be in a specific city for a long time, at least in the next 10 years. And so I built my portfolio around the fact that like I'm not going to be in a specific city. So like that's a disadvantage, right? But then because I'm assuming that as a truth, what are my advantages? Well, I can invest anywhere because it doesn't really matter where I am. So now I'm actually in upstate New York. So actually not Buffalo, but I'm in Syracuse.
Not very far at all.
Yeah, not far at all. I actually have some coworkers in Buffalo too.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, in Syracuse, I have 6 units closing on a 7th. I think next week actually, and then I have 1 unit currently in North Carolina with I think currently 1 under contract there. Indianapolis, I have 3 units, which is 2 properties, and I have the quadplex in Denver. So I also have a property in Georgia, but I'm selling it, so I don't consider that part of it.
You forgot about that one, huh?
Yeah. I was saying I felt like I could buy anywhere because it didn't really matter, but there still is a lot of advantages to have some focus. Like right now, I'm trying to shrink the number of states I'm in a little bit and just keep certain states that kind of represent a different risk profile. So Syracuse, for those not familiar, it's a really relatively cheap market. You can get a lot of properties. You can get duplexes under 60K, under 70K. But then in Denver, it's a totally opposite risk profile. So I kind of balance out my like total risk profile with like some more appreciating markets, something in the middle, like Indianapolis, and then something like Syracuse, which is just pure cash flow.
I want to go back to your portfolio because you kind of real nonchalantly rattled off like multiple states that you're investing in. So I just want to make sure the listeners understand your portfolio. How many total units are you at today?
Yeah, I'm currently at 15 units with 2 under contract.
Got it. So 15 plus 2. And then what are the markets that those units are in? You don't have to give us the numbers, but just what are the different cities that you're investing in?
Denver, Indianapolis, Syracuse, Fayetteville, Hinesville, which is more like Savannah market.
I want to get into how you're identifying these different markets and like, I guess even before how you're identifying them, like why go to so many different markets as a new investor? Like some people think that whatever market they start in, like they're just going to go super heavy and deep, but it seems like you've kind of gone the opposite approach where you've really spread it out. So how are you identifying those markets? And then what makes you feel comfortable to be in so many different markets as a relatively new investor?
I think one thing is like me approaching it from a risk profile perspective, just like different markets feel different, right? It's like it's a different type of cash flow or it's just appreciation. Like in Denver, I don't really feel comfortable just buying a single family and renting it out traditionally. And I want to make sure I'm optimizing on interest rates. So I don't feel like I want to go too fast there if I don't have things lined up properly. In other markets, it's easier to do full BRRRR or it's easier to get like a discount that you want, especially in kind of the secondary markets. Like for instance, like Fayetteville or Syracuse, they're not the first city you think of when you think of the state they're in. Like you don't have to like directly go and bid over asking on every single offer. Whereas like in Denver, like that was what my agent told me. It was like, hey, you should just bid over asking every time. I mean, my first market was Indianapolis, and that was because it's a hot investor market, or one of many. But I read David Green's book, so it's like, oh, like if I had to like say like the who not how, like David Green, well, I didn't work with him directly, but like his book was kind of what started like my whole thing about like, oh, I can actually do this from thousands of miles away. And so I used his book's method, which is like like go through Zillow, like get agents, interview them, talk about like what you're looking for, and then like get yourself set up with like an MLS mailer. So like that was how I got my first agent, was just reaching out and interviewing investor agents.
Let's talk about how you are managing these. You're moving all over the countries. And what does that look like for you? How is your property management? Are you outsourcing everything? Do you manage some yourself?
So I'm using Hemlane. That's more self-service. It's kind of a mix of self-service and they provide a maintenance service. Then like my property managers, it's really up to them for what they use, but it's Appfolio and Rent Manager right now. For Hemlane, it's the reason why I picked them, and I think there's a couple other options now that are kind of starting with similar services. The great thing about them is they basically have the 24-hour on-call service, and they also manage any maintenance. All you have to do as an owner is to approve or deny like certain requests that are coming in, or like approve quotes or ask for another quote. But beyond that, like you still have to take care of things like the lease, or if there's a noise complaint, they'll still call the owner, right? Because technically I'm the property manager on file. But like it handles the one thing I didn't want to do in real estate. And that was to pick up calls in the middle of the night and have to like figure out how to deal with sewage backflow or something.
And it's a really interesting concept as well. Like, so Steve Rosenberg and I were on the BiggerPockets Instagram and Facebook last week, and we were talking a lot about, what are the things that a real estate investor should be doing versus maybe they shouldn't be doing. And, I think even this is even for me, right? Like, I kind of struggled with the fact that I wasn't, replacing the flooring in my units or, picking the cabinets or like doing all these kind of really tactical things. But at the end of the day, being a real estate investor isn't necessarily about doing the work, but it's about finding the deals, putting them together, managing the properties and doing those things. And I think the benefit of managing remotely, of owning properties out of state, is that you can't go to them. You can't be the one doing the work. So you have to set up the systems, you have to set up the teams to make it work. And it kind of forces you into being more of a real estate investor than like a real estate laborer. Right. So I think your story really illustrates that. Now you've got a decent sized portfolio now, and I want to talk a little bit about how you're finding these. So are these all coming off the MLS? Are you working with wholesalers? Just kind of walk us through your process of sourcing deals.
When I started, COVID just hit. No one was, there wasn't these bidding wars we're seeing now. So I actually got my first deal under contract, like in Indianapolis, I think 12K under asking, like when after all the inspection, negotiation and whatnot, which I don't think you can get now, I think. So it was a lot easier like in the middle of COVID. Afterwards, I started doing wholesalers, which, I would just go search the key terms that their websites are set up for. So they might be like, we buy houses, because they're looking, you have to realize like what their intent is, right? In real estate, I think it's a lot about aligning people's incentives, and they're looking for people who want to sell houses. So you look for the keywords that people would search in Google for wanting to sell their house if they were a distressed homeowner. Then you find basically an entire list of all the wholesalers like in that city. Also, your agent, like if they're an investor agent, a lot of times they'll know wholesalers, especially if they have their own portfolio. So I just started to get on more and more lists of wholesalers, and every morning, people are sending tons of deals, and you try to like analyze it really quick because a lot of them are selling in like the good ones are selling in like an hour or 10 minutes or less, which is hard with a full-time job. That was how I was getting deals for a while with wholesalers. And then I started to do direct to seller marketing myself. I am pretty busy with my full-time job. So I ended up, I closed the deal over Christmas while I was on break. And then the first thing I did, like as, holidays were ending, was to hire a VA to do all the marketing for me. So now I have someone full-time in the Philippines. They actually make offers too, because I don't have time to get on the phone during the day, especially in the East Coast hours. We have a process where the VA will, have someone interested, try to collect some information. Then she'll let them know that she'll follow up. She needs to talk to me, or I think she probably says investment team, but I'm just one person. But basically, like she'll ask me like what I'm comfortable with offering, and then she can go make the offer and negotiate or whatever needs to be done there.
So you've really built a team. And again, I think this goes back to you and the concept of who, not how, what you talked about earlier. And really quick, for the listeners that are curious, if you want to go back to the OG podcast, it's episode 423 with Dan Sullivan. He's the author of the book, Who, Not How, and he does a really good job of explaining what that whole theory and kind of methodology is. But Michael, you've really internalized that. And I love that you've kind of built the teams and the system to support that. So I think you mentioned a really important point though, right? Is that how you found your first deal and how you're finding deals today is a very different process. And you've kind of graduated as you've learned more and as you become a better real estate investor of how to source deals, right? You went from, working with agents, and now you're doing off-market stuff where you've hired a VA, right? Those are very different processes. But I think the point I want to make to the listeners is that all of those things take time. And you start to kind of layer your experiences on top of each other. And once you try this, now you're comfortable with this level. Okay, let me try this out. Okay, cool. I've kind of mastered this. Let me try this out. And like every single deal kind of moves you one step further towards becoming like a really cool, ninja deal finder like Michael is today.
Yeah. And I think like the big thing for the first time investor is to realize that your numbers improve all across the board. Like every single metric improves as you go farther along.
So, Michael, you haven't even been doing this for a year. You've scaled your portfolio. How are you financing this? So you mentioned putting 25% down. Are you, pulling money from your W-2 income? Did you have money saved up? how you've been able to finance this and continue to keep growing.
Well, for me, like I do work like in tech, so like my job pays pretty well, but I am also in startups, and I've invested in like my own startup ideas in the past. So, like I didn't come in with a ton of savings, depending on who I'm comparing to, but it's just whatever way is possible. And I did a lot of research into like financing and what's out there, what's available. I'm not researching as much now, but like I've done like the 401k loan where you can basically get up to 50K out of your 401k. I've got some private money, so that's like finding other people who are willing to lend to you at a return. Then conventional financing for a lot of deals. That was basically all my first few deals, and then now I'm kind of like building relationships with basically small credit unions, and some of them only serve certain states. Some of them will serve you in one state and then they'll follow you to the rest of the country.
Do you want to take us through one of your deals and we'll really break down into the financing, the purchase, and what the numbers are? Do you have a deal in mind you'd like to really dive into?
Yeah, so I was gonna talk about my house hack, which was kind of my second deal. But we can also, if you guys want afterwards, we can talk about something that's a little more creative. Because this will, I think, for standard house hacks, this is probably gonna, kind of not be as out there.
So sorry, Michael, really quick before you dive in, I just want to set the table for the listeners a little bit, just so we can kind of wrap our heads around what the deal is that we're getting into. So I'll just ask you some quick questions. Just give me a quick one-word response so we can set the table for folks. But what market was this property in?
This one was in Denver.
And what was the purchase price on it?
$745K.
745. Wow, that's a big purchase price.
And different market.
Yeah. What was the building type? Single family, multifamily?
There's a multifamily fourplex.
And then you said your strategy on this was to house hack, correct?
House hack, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Awesome, man. So, all right, give us a story, man. How'd you find it? How'd you make it work? What's the nitty gritty?
I reached out to Craig Curelop, who wrote the house hacking book on BiggerPockets. And he started sending me like listings. I started with making offers on like non-conforming duplexes or like single family, trying to do like a traditional house hack in Denver. Kind of rent by the room is what he does and what he kind of promotes the most. And then at some point he kind of was telling me like how he thinks about like the FHA loan versus conventional loan. And, with the FHA, you should just buy a quadplex with it because it's the only one out of all your conventional type of loans that can be used for that, unless you're VA or something else. I started making bids on quadplexes in addition to the single family. This one is kind of on the border of, I think it's Montclair and East Colfax in Denver area. It's an up and coming area. It's like kind of street by street. There's a completely new development that like encompasses a couple blocks. But then on the other side of the street where mine is, it's like kind of, a lot of Section 8 tenants, a lot more run down. Got a totally different vibe. And so it's kind of like path to progress. And that was kind of, it wasn't one of the standard areas Craig kind of pushes properties, but like he was saying, it's path of progress. And we basically went in making an offer above asking, I think. I don't remember what the asking price exactly was, but I remember we were making like offers above asking for everything, including the single family. Basically try to promise a quick close. I worked with his mortgage lender. I work with basically like any part of the system that he already had in place. I just went with that rather than going what I did for the Indiana property because I wanted everything to work smoothly and go as fast as possible. If I lost some money, it's okay because, it's all about the learning. I think there was a bunch of interest, but we're the first one to kind of put in a hard, fast offer above asking. Yeah, then we got it under contract, I guess, within 48 hours. So nothing crazy there. We sent out inspector. And for this one, they missed the rents. They missed like crediting all the closing costs properly back to me. So you got to always check your closing statement. There was one Section 8 tenant. There was a nonprofit in there that helps with families in transition. So a lot of really different, interesting tenant profiles. And then one unit that was going to be vacant on close. So I worked with Hemlane. They set me up with their local property manager. Property manager helped me get a tenant there. It took like 3 weeks. Screened a couple candidates, got in pretty quickly. I signed contracts with Section 8 and the nonprofit. And
can you explain real quick what Section 8 is and how it works with the nonprofit and how they differ?
Yeah. So Section 8 is a government program, subsidized housing. The nice part of it is that you're getting the rent directly from the government or a portion of it, depending on the specific tenant. And the thing though is some people don't like it because it's generally like someone with a lower income who might be struggling a little bit financially. My take is that people are people and you're going to find good eggs and bad eggs no matter where you go. But I like the government part of it. One thing that they won't do though is Section 8, they're not going to like add and fix the property themselves because they don't have the budget to do so, which some like standard tenants might do. But yeah, that's basically Section 8. Other than that, like you just got to deal with a government entity. There's usually a housing authority in every major city that handles it. But beyond that, it's pretty straightforward. They do have an annual inspection, which a normal tenant wouldn't require, but the government requires. Make sure you're treating your tenant well. The nonprofit is similar, but they basically have tenants or families in transition. So they might have like an empty unit for a few weeks at a time, maybe a month at a time. Then they will have a tenant in there for like 2 weeks up to 3 months. So there's different families kind of rolling through. And that adds a lot of risk, right? But they basically also add their own insurance. So they pay for like 100K insurance on any damages in the property. And if there's any damages beyond normal wear and tear, the nonprofit's actually responsible for it. So it's not like triple net, which is like a commercial term that says like the tenants pay for all expenses and maintain the property, but they do anything beyond normal wear and tear. So that's why I was comfortable with it. It was like the insurance plus the additional maintenance they cover.
This was a big purchase, right? I mean, at 745,000, you're buying a 4 unit, and your house hacking, so you're going to live in one of the units. What was the analysis that you ran, Michael, to say this deal is going to profit at such a high purchase price?
Well, one, I ran the numbers myself. I actually, before I went in tech in college, I was thinking about going into finance. So I've done a lot of like, case competitions for investing or for like investment banking, DCF analysis, whatever. I haven't done it in a long time though. I'm not like an expert, but like I ran the numbers. Everything looks good.
That was my next question. I was going to ask for a crash course on DCF analysis. I'm glad you added that in there.
I ran my numbers though. It looked good. The comps, like, to be honest, this one's in a worse area. So the price was lower, but that was, so it's within range. It's like, okay, well, it's cheaper than the nice ones, but there should be a discount because it's not as nice of an area. From my own analysis, everything worked well. Then, as a beginning investor, you start self-doubt, right? You start doubting yourself. And I think that's where it really helps to have someone that's trustworthy and has incentives aligned. So someone like Craig, Curelop, kind of, I talked it through it with him. He was telling me why he thinks it makes sense and why in the long term, this will be a good property, like regardless of which way you slice and dice it, like it's going to cash flow right now based on what we're looking at. Like you got a low interest rate, you're self-managing, which you should take into account your own costs as a manager, but basically it'll cash flow now. It's in a path of progress. It's literally across the street from a new build or new development. It's like many new builds. So everything seemed to be going for it. And I think at the time, right, like I did have some analysis paralysis, but once you like find a deal you want when you're under analysis paralysis and you lose the deal, you realize you just got to go faster. So yeah, I think that's kind of what made it comfortable. I wasn't fully comfortable, but I pulled the trigger because everything was telling me that I should do it.
You've already kind of leaded us into our next segment, but it's the mindset segment. And, I think we're going to label this one the rookie rear view. Like looking back, how did your mindset change from getting that first deal to, getting your latest deal? And did your expectations really match up with reality as to how you thought this whole process was going to go?
I think today, like I look a little bit more towards how I can do this into the future. Or what the step is of how to incorporate this into my portfolio. For instance, like the idea of just taking one next step. My one next step now is very different from my one next step before. I'm looking at Airbnbs now because I think they, the cash flow well and you can systematize it. But like on my first Airbnb purchase, like I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I do a BRRRR, maybe I do all this other stuff. But no, like I should just, I'm okay with a lower return. That can be the cost of education. Just a lower return. It's not even a negative return. And I'll buy like an Airbnb rental in a good market by someone who's done hundreds of Airbnb rentals, learn how it works. And then from there, I can think about how to incorporate it and build out a process around that portfolio. Same with acquisitions. I did it during Christmas by myself. That's not scalable. I have a full-time job. I can't be calling people during the day. So like, what's the next step? How do I get someone on board who can represent me, who can make the offers, who can basically continuously market? Because once your pipeline like disappears, you just have a dry spell for a long time. I guess like for me, the mindset's always trying to think bigger. Here's where I am today. Where do I want to be? What do people who look like that or are there, how do they think? And trying to like talk to them, or like joining mentorships or masterminds, or networking with people who are there. And then trying to think back to, okay, your specific unique situation, what pieces do you want to pull into your process? What can you do yourself? What do you need to get rid of as a result? And how do you just fit all these Lego blocks together?
A little bit of everything, right? And it sounds like you're going back to what you mentioned at the top of the show, Michael, where it's the who, not how, and really giving yourself someone that you can model. Now, something that a lot of new investors struggle with, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, is that they fear the risk associated with real estate investing. And if you could go back to Michael, who was a newbie investor, what advice would you have for yourself about how to manage that risk, or how to overcome the fear, I guess more so, that's associated with that risk?
Figure out what your next step is that you can do, and make sure that you're not going to lose, that you don't have enough at risk that you're going to be catastrophically devastated if you lose it.
Michael, you've already given our listeners some really great advice, but let's really put you to the test, and let's go to our rookie request line. Anybody can call us at 1-888-5-ROOKIE and leave a voicemail for Tony and I. I actually, before we started recording this, I saw that I just got 2 more emailed to me. So thank you guys for calling in with your questions. Are you ready, Michael, for today's question?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Hi, my name is Caleb LaBelle. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm about to do my first house hack this September, and I plan to house hack once a year for the next few years, but I'm trying to figure out what the next step should be for me in the meantime before my house hack next year. I'm trying to figure out a good practical step for my second deal, whether it be BRRRR or anything else. So I would love some advice on that. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, so I'm going to make an assumption that he doesn't want to buy another deal in between. So if you don't want to do that, then like the things you can set up is like September, right? So he still has a couple more months. So like making sure your credit's going to be good. Like when you actually purchase the property, make sure you're not opening too many new credit lines unless you're already at 10 inquiries, in which case it doesn't make a difference anymore. So beyond credit, making sure that you have the down payment ready. So you probably already know, since you did a house hack, like what you're looking at. Additionally, like making sure that you're going to have enough for the rehab too, if you're going to do any rehab for that property. So that's mostly a savings plan. So it's relatively passive. You want to make sure your agent's aware of your goals ahead of time, because if you want to do your house hack in September, it takes multiple months, right, to get a property under contract, to get it to close, especially with conventional financing. So like when I was talking to Craig about a very similar strategy early on, he was telling me like you're going to want to reach out like 3 to 4 months in advance and get the process started. We should start looking at properties. Like we can always set the contract to close, on 1 year and 1 day. And that's your goal, is to do 1 year and 1 day every year for 10 years. But to do that, you need to be making offers months in advance. So I think like for September, probably by April or May, you should be with your agent, like starting to think about making offers.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love the idea of planning ahead, right? Like if you want to be out of that property in 12 months, then by, month 8, 9, you should already be looking for that next deal. So I love the way that you're kind of thinking from a big picture view. Now, Michael, I want to take us into the next segment here, which is our random question segment. And you've got so many different cool things that I think you've experienced, but I think my big question for you is, if you could go back to the beginning and kind of start over, would you invest, or would you have invested in as many markets as you're currently in, or would you have maybe gone more narrow with your approach? There's no wrong answer here. I'm just curious what your advice would be to a new investor.
I actually still think I'll end up in like 3 or more markets, especially if I'm adding Airbnbs, because vacation and big cities are not necessarily the same thing. But I think the thing you have to realize is like there's economies of scale for any any company. And one thing I did early on was to read the SEC filings of like really big REITs. Like, how do they deal with like not going bankrupt? How do they think about expanding markets? And like how they think about like what enough density is for them to get economies of scale. I'm definitely not going to get to that scale. And I don't think my definition of economies of scale is like 200 homes in a single city before I can go to the next. Well, like even your property manager, right, will give you a 2% discount if you have like 5 to 10 properties under them. And that makes a big difference. Your contractor list, like you're like, oh, well, I just replaced the water heater. I'll call the same guy. Oh, wait, he's in a different state. Like the you have to build a completely new set of contacts, relationships, and no two people are going to be the same. Like the way my agent runs in Syracuse, he's great, but the way he runs his business is really different from like the 5 Pillars team in Fayetteville versus Craig, who also runs it really differently. So like you're going to have to basically build a new business almost in every single city. So there's definitely cons to expanding too quickly. I would have focused in one, like knowing what I know now, I would have focused in one city first for like 4 or 5 properties, really get that going before exploring another city.
I think that kind of leads into my question, and it's what would you have done differently? Like starting out as a rookie, is there something that you've changed your mind about? So you kind of mentioned, maybe starting out in another market. Is there anything else that you like thought in the beginning, like, oh, I'm only doing BRRRRs and now I want to switch to this strategy? Did anything like that change for you?
Yeah, things are changing all the time, I feel like. There is a little bit of shiny object syndrome for me where someone tells me like they're like, oh, I'm doing commercial, I'm killing it, or I'm doing multifamily, or I'm flipping 200 homes a year. I'm like, wow, like I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would necessarily change anything of like how I started, because it's hindsight's 2020, right? And I don't think I made any like big mistakes. Like, okay, I would have gone a sewer scope, like my own sewer scope. But like generally speaking, I think my process, I wouldn't have changed anything, because I really did just like do the next step I was comfortable with, and then just keep learning and keep going down that path. Like maybe I went a little too fast at one point, I went a little too slow at another point. But overall, I'm pretty happy with my approach. Maybe not all the results. I might have changed the property I bought or something.
Before we wrap up, I just want to give one quick shout out to someone from our rookie community. So for today's rookie rock star, I'd like to shout out Michelle Bolanos Barlow. So she posted in the Facebook group, the Rookie Real Estate Facebook group, that she just closed on her first duplex, and she's super excited to get the next one. So Michelle, congrats to you. And so if you guys want to get shouted out, just be active in the Rookie Facebook group, tag us on Instagram, let us know what you guys are doing. We'll be sure to give you guys a shout out there as well.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. And if people want to reach out to you or follow your journey, where's the best way that they can reach you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Michael Sue. Sue is just SU. So I don't have a lot of content yet, but I'll try to post more before this show goes live.
I am Ashley Kerr at Wealth from Rentals, and he's Tony Robinson at Tony J. Robinson. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Make sure you guys are listening to Wednesday and Saturday episodes, the new Rookie Reply.